What's up, my Canadian cousins? Welcome back and Happy New Year. I hope you all are doing very, very well. So I am getting back to Canadian World War II history. It's a topic I've been really loving to explore, known a little bit, learning a lot more. Did Juno Beach. I did a video concerning Canada's very significant involvement in the invasion of Sicily. I'm going to eventually, hopefully sooner than later, do Canada's participation in the push up the Italian boot. I looked at a video some time ago about why the Dutch love Canada so much, and of course that centers a lot around the Canadian liberation of the Netherlands. You know, and in all of those, I have purposefully looked for videos to react to that had the actual, you know, not just documentary style, but had interviews interspersed with real veterans. Sadly, we're losing so many every year. There are very few left, and we have to preserve their stories. And I'm glad that there are documentarians that are endeavoring to do that. And if I can, you know, highlight some of those by reacting to them, I certainly am very happy to do so. And I will drop links in the description for those prior videos here in case you're interested. This one, we are going to be looking at a particular class of World War II veterans, some unsung heroes, the women, the Canadian women, both who have held down the home front, who went to work in the factories, you know, famously the indelible picture of Rosie the Riveter we know about in the United States. Well, Canada was no different than the US in terms of women going to work in the factories, women holding down the home front, and women going overseas and participating in the military in various roles. I don't know really anything about the Canadian women in the Canadian Armed Forces during World War II, but I'm so looking forward to checking this video out and learning a lot more about these amazing women from an amazing generation. All right, my friends, without further ado, let us get to the video. If you like this content and you are so inclined, please remember to subscribe if you are not, and hit that like button, and I will see you as always on the flip side.
It was a happy place. But you always had it in the back why you were there, you know. That was war.
I wanted to be part of the war. It was a good part of my life, I think. I was very proud of that.
Did it bother you that you were making weapons?
No. Felt kind of proud that we were putting out such a beautiful gun. The Bren gun was a beauty.
We were happy to do what we were able to do. I never thought it was so much to somebody said it. It was a very big thing that you did. I'm glad I did my part to win the war.
Each and every one of them.
I believe war was a man's job. But the women rolled up their sleeves and pitched into an amazing assortment of jobs. And as they took over these duties, many of them dull, dirty, and monotonous, they released men for frontline fighting.
I figured that if we all help out, we'll be able to get them home sooner. That was my only reason. I wanted them to come back sooner than they did.
I watched a PBS documentary, I think by Ken Burns, about World War II, and I remember a woman saying something very similar to that. It's an interesting sentiment. And, you know, just, can you imagine in today's world, a bunch of allied nations pulling together to do what was absolutely necessary, the entire society pulled together to create the material for war, to support the troops, to go over to do what was necessary. Man, I don't know. You know, they call it the greatest generation, and in some ways it was, in some ways it wasn't. You know, we can't look at everybody through rose-colored glasses. We know that, we've made progress in terms of racism and such, but yeah, there was something special about that generation.
Defense Industries Limited showed up in Saskatoon recruiting single women. He couldn't tell me very much about it. I said, I really don't want to sign up for this and find out I'm going to be scrubbing toilets. And he said, you might be. He said, it's all important, whatever it is that you are assigned to, depending on your abilities.
The industry gave a sort of national wolf whistle.
3 days later, we arrived in Toronto. It was an adventure.
I said women wouldn't pay any attention, but they came from all over Canada.
Well, I was thrilled. We lived in Smith Falls, and usually you just, went to school, you got married, that's it. So to come to the big city and get a job and work, it was really exciting.
You guys don't remember the Depression. There was no work. So people were destitute, so we had a great big garden, and from the garden, we didn't know what meat was. I didn't know what a steak was. I didn't know what pork chops was. I didn't know any of that till I came to Toronto.
That's wonderful. And I assume in Canada there was rationing like there was here in the U.S. And my grandmother was very, very proud to be a World War II generation woman. Her older brother actually fought in France in World War I. There was a big age gap because there were a lot of children in her family, and she was among the youngest. And her husband, my grandfather, fought in World War II. She was very proud of his military service, of course, but she was also proud of what they did on the home front. They would, even in small urban houses and suburban houses, they would make their front yard into gardens to grow vegetables and such, and they called them Liberty Gardens. I assume there was something similar going on in Canada.
Streaming daily into over 50 explosive and chemicals plants across the nation, the tide of workers floods in. And as more than 50,000 men and women crowd towards the gates, men and women who once worked on farms, in garages and in stores, they become part of an industry whose soaring expansion is one of the great stories of Canada's wartime mobilization.
The first 3 days that we were there were orientation days. And we were interviewed, we were fingerprinted, we were photographed. Things were explained to us, how important it was that this job was very important, not to be taken lightly. And if any rules were broken, and the rule book was quite thick, if any rules were broken, we'd be gone. We changed in the locker room, and we got fresh clothes every day. No jewelry, no hairpins, nothing that would create any static electricity.
Because what would happen?
It would blow up.
I'm making dangerous business, huh?
That isn't a bandana.
Not really, it's the wrong
How
shape,
can you tie
isn't it?
that?
No, I don't know, but if you just put it into
That's not a bandana. You put them on like this. You tied it up here, making sure all your hair was covered. As you can see in the pictures, people did manage to get some hair out. Then we used to take this here and flip it up and tuck it in. It made kind of a nice little pom-pom there on the top.
I guess you never forget.
Classy.
It was overwhelming because when they hired you, they didn't tell you what you were going to do or anything. They just sent you to a bench with a group of people and said, this is what you're going to do. And of course, I wasn't very good at it, I'll tell you.
WWII powder on its way to the caps and dets room. Caps and detonators. Go slow. Be careful. Check again.
I was working in the cordite area, and before the shells came to us, they were burnished, beautifully shined up and everything. And one gentleman, for some reason, there was some type of explosive or something, and somehow static electricity. He thought it wasn't burnished quite well enough, and so he thought he'd give it another little touch, and he lost an eye.
Oh, wow.
They would tell you about the girl who caught her hair in the drill shaft, and it pulled her scalp out. And they had that piece of hair with her scalp on it in alcohol. This was what might happen if you don't wear your bandana properly.
Oh my God. Well, that's why they know how to tie it still to this day so well. Oh my Lord. Yeah, industrial casualties. You know, so many people died in the war from accidental death too, not just in combat. It's a lot, a huge percentage.
Those on the lakes, Barney builds bombs, Brenda does Brent guns all day long. They're not shy bells, they're bombshells, kicking hate off where it hurts. They've got boyfriends fighting.
There was a lot of accidents there. Like I got my thumb taken right off on a machine. A lot of fun. We had a lot of fun, didn't we?
She's a real cutie, she's doing her duty. She doesn't look like
tough old lady.
a million in a skirt.
Into the armed forces or transferred to new factories took many of the skilled workers employed here in peacetime. Those who remained trained the new workers.
His name was William. He did work for the company.
I'm just enjoying the big band music. I love that era, and it reminds me of my grandma. She was a wonderful woman.
He was 20 years of age. He asked me one day if I knew this song, My Prayer.
My prayer is to linger with you.
And after I finished singing it, he turned away like this, and he wouldn't look at me. And so I figured later on that he was in tears. And I figured also that he was trying to tell me something through this song. And we were married. He joined the Navy, and he went overseas 3 months later. His ship was torpedoed.
Beautiful picture.
And sunk in the English Channel.
I felt sorry one night for me working in there, and I was getting tired, and I felt, terrible. And then all of a sudden, my mind came to him. My brother's out there lying in the trenches, and the bullets flying over his head, and here I'm sorry for what I'm doing. I should be ashamed of myself. And so that made me feel better, and I was quite happy where I was working compared to what he was doing.
We were free. We had money. We could do things. Now we weren't restricted quite so much with our parents and that.
I like the point she just made, and I know this just being a history guy, history major in school, whatever. Yeah, the freedom that the women had during the war was a foundation for equality in women's liberation movement. Now, the 50s was sort of a backstep in terms of that, because society just wanted to sort of get back to normal, but the seeds were sown, and it was inevitable that it would happen from this.
The war helped me a lot, yeah. With making money at John Inglis, people couldn't get over that I saved my bonds, and I went to Herman's Furs and bought a fur coat. Can you imagine that at 21? Buying a fur coat?
Good for you. My wife has nothing to worry about me whistling at these women because I'm just this young, I'm way too young and soft for them. They needed a World War II generation guy. No one like me.
To have a beauty pageant during making of guns and all the
Someone had the same idea.
things to do with the war, and they stop and have a beauty pageant. Why? I don't know.
Hello?
We used to go out quite a bit. We had some
The capability and toughness is every bit as attractive as the swimsuits.
lovely parties. We had parties at the King Edward Hotel and Castle Loma. And then we used to dance at the Palais Royal, and what they call the Sea Breeze in the summer, which was an outdoor dance hall.
Remember, we were young girls, only 18 years old. Remember that? Because we changed from the zipper thing and got all dressed up. I had long hair, and you did your hair up, and you went dancing at the Sea Breeze, not looking like John Inglis.
So any of the boys that you were dating, or the service boys that you were dating?
No, we didn't bother with them.
You mean you didn't bother with them?
She's a character.
We met a lot of men,
Yeah.
and like every time we met a man, he was going overseas. I'd see him twice overseas again. Then I'd meet another fella. Lots of fun. Many times they'd asked her to write to them overseas. I wrote to a lot of fellas.
Yeah.
But when I came home in Toronto, when I bought my house, I tore all the airmen and I tore all their pictures.
You didn't.
I did, yeah, I tore them all up. Because I was married then.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was married.
My husband's ship was torpedoed and sunk in the English Channel. We were told there are survivors. We waited for 3 long, lonely, and torturous months before the Germans would release the names. There was 128 boys did not make it.
She said torturous months, which was exactly, I was waiting for her to speak, and I was just going to say torture. Oh my goodness, what a mental anguish she must have gone through.
And the postman, when he found the card in his pack, he went directly to the neighborhood. And he gathered up all the neighbors in the neighborhood. And they're all walking behind him and came to our door. They were holding flags, waving, shouting. They knew, before my mother-in-law knew, that he was in a German prison camp. She phoned me at the Norman Slater Company, and I asked my boss if it's all right to go home. And he said yes, of course. When I went down the stairs from where I was located, I heard all this banging going on, and what it was all the boys in the shop were banging on their machines, and they were just trying to say to me, "Great, just great news." That's what they did. They were banging on their machines with the hammers. So I ran all the way home.
Bringing a little tear to my eye here. Oh, that's beautiful.
Well, I remember the day the war ended.
I do too. Oh, we yelled our head off in John Inglis.
There was kind of a deep-seated relief, you know? No more guns, no more killings. It was a relief.
Now, I wonder if this is the celebration of VE Day or VJ Day. I have said this before on a prior video, and I kind of looked. I'm not sure if there were Canadian troops slated to join in a major way the Pacific War after the war in Europe ended and would have been part of the invasion of Japan. I don't know.
Once the boys came home, we had to give up our jobs and return them to them. They told us that at the very beginning. They said, immediately the boys come home and want to get back to work, you will leave the company.
There was 14 to 16,000 people worked at Small Arms. And in one day, we were told that was the end of the factory. Amen. No warning, no nothing. That was it. So we're all out of work in that day. It wasn't fair at all.
That's a tough one.
Well, I didn't leave at the end of the war. I stayed on for a while making cigarette lighters. And it wasn't the same. This was just a job. And the setup men or whoever it was looking after would come along and say, well, now don't forget that the batten has to go in there real tight, because if someone goes into Simpson's and buys a cigarette lighter and it's not, and the batten isn't packed in there tight, they're not going to like it. And is that important? That isn't what I was used to, you know, packing batten in a cigarette lighter.
Every woman thrilled to fascinating devices which were to turn the post-war home into a housewife's paradise and make housekeeping a pleasant part-time avocation.
I was happily married, and my husband had a job. He was of the old school that felt if he couldn't support us, he was not doing a good job, and that I didn't need to work. Maybe we could have used the money, of course, but it wasn't the money, it was I had nothing to do, which was a terrible, sad time.
Oh, that must have been a really tough adjustment for these women. They not only had jobs and some financial independence and some sense of themselves, that they had confidence that they were capable and they could do and live without relying on their father or their husband, to suddenly, you know, society was what it was, to suddenly lose all that, and the purpose for what they were working toward in the war was monumental. so that even those that kept their jobs, it probably was a sincere feeling of loss of purpose, as the that beautiful woman with the cigarette lighter example said before.
Of my life. Maybe one of the neighbors laughed and said, "She's washed the walls so often the nails are showing through." I was depressed, yes.
Well, they just figured the woman's place is in the home. They weren't very happy about their women going out. They figured they should stay in the house. But it changed. The majority won. They think the women is just as good as right to go to work as the men.
Here we are.
Great.
Carry them with me. You never know when you're going to use them, and that's what I do with the spoon. And you can do roll out the barrel. We'll have a barrel of fun. Roll out the barrel. During the war, they were treated as equals with the men, and so there was a definite change. The influence of the war had a lot to do with making women independent. For the gang's all here. There we are.
My daughter-in-law was right, and I take my hat off to the ladies. To many of the problems of war, they gave a new solution. To the problems of peace, they are doing the same.
Later on in life, about 4 years ago, I was at an event at the Ajax Library. And I was introduced to a gentleman. "Come, Louise, you must meet this man." And he was a gentleman about my age, and he was visiting from England. He was in the service. He said, whenever we opened one of those cases that said Ajax on it, we knew we had good ammunition. And I thought that was important.
Heck yeah.
All those years later.
Love it. Love it. Oh.
Well, this one I don't know. Even though I worked on parts of it, I'd never seen a completed one before. But this is the old standby. This is the beautiful Bren.
Mm.
It's elegant looking, isn't it? And I'm proud of what I did for it. And what you did for me. Yes. Is that enough? Is that enough? Can I go now?
I think you've done quite enough. That was absolutely fantastic. I had hoped that it would go a little bit more into the women who served overseas too. Perhaps I will find another video that highlights that at some point if you're interested in that, my friends. Oh, that was lovely. Absolutely lovely. And those women were amazing. Just, I got a real kick out of them. Wow. I don't know what else to say. I think it speaks for itself, and I'm going to stop my blathering right now. Okay, my friends, I will see you very soon. Thank you for tuning in, and please remember to like and subscribe if you're not already. Until next time, take care.